the generic term Parmesan is abused all over the world. Today we're talking about, we just got in this really cool cheese.
What are we talking about?
We're talking about Parmigiano-Reggiano, cheese from northern Italy. We just got a 5-year-old aged in. Typically it's only aged a year, but there's some fun facts that people don't really know about Parmigiano-Reggiano, and the reason is because Parmesan cheese, the generic term Parmesan, is abused all over the world, including here in the US. So when you're actually asking for Parmesan cheese, in Italy that means something, or in some countries it means that you're having Parmigiano-Reggiano, and that is that's a cheese in fact. But a lot of companies have ripped off that Parmesan name, and it's applied to, like, I think Kraft used to have that tube called Parmesan cheese. I think they legally had to change the name of the cheese on there, Parmesan. I don't think they can call it Parmesan anymore, because when you use that word Parmesan, you're talking about Parmigiano-Reggiano, with that seal on the side of it. This is a 1 pound piece of 5-year-old. We just got this in, so it's been aged for 5 full years. Jamie, what are some fun facts we can talk about Parmesan cheese? Because this Parmesan culture of making cheese is a 2,000-year-old tradition in Emilia-Romagna, Italy, which is in the northern western part of Italy. For 2,000 years, they've been making this cheese for the same exact way. Highly regulated. There's a consortium there that really takes this very, very seriously. So when they see an American company or any company call something Parmesan cheese, I mean, they really get upset, because this is an amazing 2,000-year-old tradition. So what are some questions that we can...
So how long has Parmigiano-Reggiano been made for?
They say there's records of it being made for 2,000 years.
Wow.
They've been making this cheese this way for 2,000 years.
Wow.
The only ingredients in the cheese are the milk and salt and the rennet that they add.
Wow.
3 ingredients. That's it.
So tell us a little bit about what makes this cheese special. And is the milk that they use for the cheese, is it grass-fed?
Yes. All the milk that goes in the Parmigiano-Reggiano is indeed 100% grass-fed, and it comes from a small area, Parma, and where they also make prosciutto di Parma, which is also, and Barilla, the pasta manufacturer, largest Italian pasta factory, is also in that same area. So it's made from grass-fed milk. There's, I think, 4,000 to 5,000 cows in that area, and that's it, that are allowed to make milk for Parmigiano-Reggiano. The milk has to be, by law, out of the cow no more than 18 hours, and you have to use 2 milkings. So what happens is they use the milking from the night before and the milking from that morning. So 2 sets of milk go into making the cheese. No more than 18 hours. The quickest that it actually starts getting made in the cheese is in 2 hours. Some of that milk is just 2 hours old, so very, very strict on that. And you know, when you're talking about olive oil, I'm just fascinated with a lot of different styles of food and traditions, and even olive oil has to be made. I've known this for years. Olive oil has to be made super, super quick. The quicker you can pick the olive and get it into the press, the better off you are, the higher quality oil. And in 24 hours, olives are dead basically once you pick them. So this milk has to be super fresh.
Excellent. What can the cows eat?
So the cows do eat grass, but of course you have winters that happen, and the cows are only allowed to eat grass, dry grass, hay, from that part of Italy only. So they can't import anything, they can't bring in grains, things like that. It's only hay from that part of Italy. So very, very, I mean, you're thinking 2,000 years ago, this is the way you did it. You couldn't ship stuff. 1,000 years ago, 200 years ago, you couldn't ship things. So once things get made in a traditional way like that, it sticks. It's tradition, it's their culture.
Excellent. And I know you already touched upon, but just reiterate, how many cows do they have there?
4,000 to 5,000 cows, I believe. I don't think more than 5,000 cows.
Excellent.
So,
and tell us where Parmigiano-Reggiano, where it's made. I know you said the city, but is it northern Italy? Is it southern Italy?
It's northern.
It's
northern Italy. All cheese by law has to be a year old, I believe. And there's different levels, as you go up. We have a piece of like I said, we have a piece of 5-year-old here. But if you're going to the store to buy Parmigiano-Reggiano, you're going to get something that's a minimum 12 months. It could be a year and a half. And there's different, I don't know the names of the levels, but if you go to a good cheese shop, and if you want to get some of this 5-year-old Parmigiano-Reggiano, we can get you some. We have a great source for this. This retail is, gee, $45, $50 a pound, probably $40 a pound. We can get you some. Or if you're in New York City, go to Murray's. Murray's Cheese has this. They have 2-year-old and they have a 5-year-old. So this is actually aged in the warehouse in Italy. This isn't somebody who bought it, Murray's bought it, or somebody bought it and brought it here and then aged it themselves. All the cheese is aged in locked vaults and specific aging rooms in that part of Italy. So it's sort of like a 3-tier system. You have the farmer who does the milking the cows. He's not the one who makes the cheese. That never happens. You have the farmer with the milk and the cows. Then that gets shipped to, right down the road, down the block, to the guy who makes the cheese, who never owns cows. This is just part of the tradition as it's been. And then the third step is once the cheese is made, then it goes to a vault and it's aged. So it's really a 3-process thing. And people say, oh, this cheese is so expensive, it's so expensive. Yes, because first of all, you're putting a year's worth of resources, of product away, in some cases a year and a half, 2 years, in this case, 5 years. And so when you go to a restaurant and you ask for Parmesan, chances are you're not getting Parmigiano-Reggiano. You're getting something like Pecorino or Grana Padano. You're getting others, which, not saying that those are bad cheeses, but like I said, Parmesan is basically a generic cheese. So the way you can really tell if you're getting something from Parmigiano-Reggiano is from the seal there, and that's going to be stamped all the way across it. The wheels weigh an average of 86 pounds. They're huge wheels. So, it's not like something like you can just tick boxes and stuff. It's just shipped in the wheels like that, aged and shipped like that.
Are the cheese inspected?
The cheeses are inspected. Yes, they are. They actually go around with a hammer, and they were wooden like.
Who inspects
the
them?
consortium? The consortium. So to get that label on there, a lot of foods across Europe are highly regulated from where they come from. So, for example, wine. Wine has all those DOC. I don't have one handy. They have the DOC label on that little band on the neck. DOC, DOCG. French has a lot of it. France has SASIs. So things are inspected, and because they're such part of the tradition and the culture, that the government or the consortium there, they want to make sure that you're doing it the exact way and representing the brand properly. So they have their own consortium. They have their own part of this trade organization that actually inspects the cheeses. So they take each wheel and they'll hit it with this wooden hammer to feel if it's ripened properly or aging properly. If there's any hollow spots in it, then of course that cheese is now inspected further. And they take one of those people have probably seen this on the internet or on TV, those like rods where they poke into the cheese and twist it and pull out, and you can actually side swipe the cheese and go into it and pull the cheese out and taste it. So then the cheese is tasted. Sometimes the cheese might have a hollow spot and the cheese may still be good. Sometimes the cheese may just not be good. We're talking about nature here, and if the enzymes and bacteria just don't happen properly, then the cheese isn't good. So if the cheese is no good, here's the interesting thing: the cheese is not allowed to be sold as Parmigiano-Reggiano. It's actually stripped of the logo. It will never get the logo. It's stripped of the skin, and what happens is they sell it off to a manufacturer, to a food processor, who then puts it in lasagna or whatever, but they're not allowed to call it Parmigiano-Reggiano. About 10%, so 1 out of every 10 wheels gets rejected.
That's
so
high standards.
Very high standards, very high standards. They take this very, very seriously. They taste, they inspect, and this keeps happening with the cheese to make sure that it's ready, or when they're getting actually ready to sell it, that it's actually the real deal, and they can be proud to put Parmigiano-Reggiano on the label.
So, it always interests me, the outside of cheeses are hard. Tell us a little bit about what makes that.
That's just the rind.
That's just
where it's exposed to air, and of course that gets the most. It dries out.
Yep,
it dries out. So.
Excellent. So.
Some are more edible than others. So, some people save the rinds and cook with them and do things with them. So. Years and years ago when I was first introduced.
The process is really cool on how they make the cheese. You should Google it, right?
Yes.
You have to Google Parmigiano-Reggiano.
Yeah, because they use these massive copper vats.
It's very cool.
And the wheel is the same size every single time. The wheel's the same size. They use this large copper vat. They add in the milk. Then they add the rennet, which is made from an enzyme from, I believe, probably the cattle right there, from the beef right there. And it's heated up, curdled, and then they take these wooden paddles and they mix and mix, and then they put a cloth underneath it and lift it up. Now, we've never been there. We really need to go there. We're going to Italy in 4 weeks. We're going to be near there, sort of, but then we're heading over to Slovenia to visit one of the vineyards we do business with over there, Movia, and we're going into Veneto, and we're doing Barolo, Dagliani, Lake Garda, Lugana, Valpolicella, Soave, Verona for 2 nights. So we're going in the opposite direction, but if we went this direction, I mean, this is where the famed Prosciutto di Parma is from, and something very interesting. So as they're making this cheese, you have the whey runoff, which all the milk is not usable for cheese. You know, the whey runoff, which we met a company yesterday that was making vodka from whey. So when you make cheese, you can have this runoff, which is not part of, now it's a waste product. So in Italy, what they do in this part, in Parma, they take this whey runoff and it's fed to the pork there, to the pigs. And,
very cool.
And so that's part of now the Prosciutto di Parma regulations, is that you have to feed your pigs whey from the Parmigiano-Reggiano producers. So it's like this nice cycle there. They're keeping everything local and recycling. So the pigs eat that, and in 9 months, and they go and made prosciutto. And I don't know how long prosciutto's legally aged for. 9 months, I believe, is what prosciutto has to be legally aged for, the prosciutto ham, which is also another trademark infringement when people look at it across the globe. Prosciutto in Italy specifically, it's ham, but when you say Prosciutto di Parma, you're talking about the famed ham, Italian ham from Parma, from this exact region. So they pull this cloth up, the whey comes down, the whey goes to the pigs, they pull this cloth up, and then they cut that in half. That makes 2 wheels. And the copper vats that they're using are the same things they've used for the last 500 years, 1,000 years. It's the same. I mean, some of them are indeed, hundreds of years old. Something also interesting about this region, this is where they make the famed balsamic vinegar too.
Ah.
The famed balsamic vinegar comes from this part of Italy. So it's really a food mecca up in this part of Italy, and we really need to get there and at one point and check things out. We've driven through there. I don't remember 1997. We had driven through there in 97, but of course we didn't stop. So we were on a strict timeline to get to Nice and then up and through Burgundy where we were going. So anything else that we can say about this cheese?
No, I think you touched upon a lot of stuff. This is very, very educational.
Yep. And if anybody wants to come try some. We have some here. We're probably going to serve this with prosciutto. Probably go on our specials with prosciutto. Not Prosciutto di Parma, but Prosciutto Americano from a producer out in Iowa, La Quercia. La Quercia is a couple from Iowa. And interestingly enough, they lived in Parma. Came to Iowa, and great story, and they're making prosciutto in a traditional way that they would in Parma, or it's close to it. They're not. I don't think they have whey runoff from Reggiano at their neighbors that they're doing that, but they're making it in a very old world style, and so we'll probably serve it with that prosciutto. Very, very good American prosciutto. So, and the one way that you can always tell real prosciutto is only allowed the pork and salt. And I was reading labels the other day because I was in a place that had prosciutto on the shelf, and I actually took some pictures. The prosciutto that was being called prosciutto, it's not prosciutto di Parma, it's just generic prosciutto. This expensive stuff had all these funky ingredients in it. Preservatives, sulfites, and I'm like, wow. It's amazing, because when you go to a restaurant, you just assume, hey, this is prosciutto, how bad could it be, or what's actually in it, and just the funky chemicals in it were just mind-boggling. This was brand after brand. I went through about 4 or 5 brands and looking at the packages, and it was mind-boggling. The La Quercia we get is salt and the pork. Prosciutto di Parma, salt and pork. This cheese, they didn't have the luxury 1,000 years ago, 500 years ago, 300 years ago to put preservatives in their food. So they made food that would last. Thus, this is why this is aged for a minimum of a year, so it can last and it's more shelf stable, or stays in the refrigerator. Now, if you do buy a bigger piece of Reggiano at your house, make sure that when you cut into it, each piece gets wrapped very, very tightly. Air is the number one detriment to this. We have a cryovac machine here, so we're going to actually seal it professionally, properly seal it. but make sure you cut it, wrap it, double wrap it if you have to, put it in a Ziploc bag, push all the air out. So that's the number one thing that'll start deteriorating this cheese is air. It's meant to be cut and used. So give a thumbs up if you like this video, share it if you found it interesting, informative, and we'll make more videos like this. All right, thanks for watching, everybody.
Have a great day.